Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here with the greatest recordings ever. You know, I've been getting interesting comments on this series when I tell you what the greatest recordings ever are, and I get, I think you would have chosen that one, or my favorite is that one. Well, the reality is there is more than one greatest recording ever of standard repertory works, particularly. And that should not come as a surprise, because some of the greatest conductors ever and greatest artists ever have done fabulous work in standard repertoire. And when you have millions of recordings of these same old, then of course there's going to be more than one. And as always with these sorts of things, these do not necessarily represent my favorite recordings, nor do they necessarily represent what might be the greatest ever recording of that particular work, because that's really a stupid concept. There isn't a greatest recording of ever of any particular work when there are multiple wonderful recordings, right? Don't we all know that? Of course we do. I mean, that's the way this thing works. So I just want to make that clear. You know, I'm not telling you what the best ever recording of that piece is. That's in the repertoire videos, where I tell you what the best one is. It's my however choice. And of course, that's the objective best one. But for this series, we just want to know what great recordings of things are. And if there's more than one, there may be more than one. I mean, Beethoven's Fifth may come up 10 times in this series. Who knows? Because they are still among the greatest recordings ever. I mean, it's that simple. A great recording is a great recording. And if there can only be one, then what's the point in listening to anybody else? No. We want to find the galaxy of greatest recordings. And if there are more than one for particular works, well, good. That's why I mention other performances in these videos. So, what are we talking about now? We're talking about Bruckner's Fourth Symphony, the Romantic. Now, my favorite recording is the Barenboim Chicago Deutsche Grammophon one, just because of the brass playing. I mean, it's just so insane, the brass playing on that recording, the scherzo. Oh my God. And it's not my pick for the greatest recordings ever. My pick for the greatest recordings ever is Böhm and Vienna, with the Vienna Philharmonic on Decca. Now, this one is, I believe, one of the greatest recordings ever, because it really reveals the characteristic sonority of the Vienna Philharmonic. I mean, like almost no other recording that they ever made. It's remarkable. In particular, since this is Bruckner, we're talking about brass playing and string tremolos. Those are sort of the two poles on which Bruckner hangs his hat. What do I mean string tremolos? String tremolo is just a blah, 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 right? That's a string tremolo. Well, sort of. Look, Bruckner writes acres of string tremolos. String players hate Bruckner, despise Bruckner, because it's boring and it's tiring and it's long. It goes on forever, and they're just going like this for like weeks on end. It's the same reasons they hate Sibelius. It's the same thing. It's very, very tiresome to play. So the Vienna Philharmonic, for some reason, knows how to do its string tremolos in Bruckner. So does Berlin. It's a European orchestra thing. American orchestras, which don't have the tradition of Bruckner playing, aren't as on top of string tremolos. And you know, it has to do with knowing the music well and knowing how you fit in the texture and where you are in it. And I've noticed that. I mean, if you go to an orchestral concert where they're doing Bruckner symphonies, and I've seen a bazillion of them, and the orchestra is not really into it, look at the backstand violinists when they're doing all those acres of tremolos. I mean, they're sitting there looking like they're ready to pass out. They're so bored. They're like this. They're going, but watch the Vienna Philharmonic do a Bruckner symphony. Every one of them is on the edge of their seat, alert, and their tremolos are crisp, and they're going, it really matters. They know what it is. and they don't care that they're not getting the tune. See, most violinists only want to play the tune. And anytime they don't get the tune, I had this in my community orchestras all the time. It was crazy. We were doing Rimsky-Korsakov's Christmas Eve Suite. And at one point, the violins do a lot of accompanying, and that they're going bum ba-da-dum, 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 because there's that, what's his name? The Smith guy is riding around on his magic broom, or I don't know, but there's riding music. And the violins are just going, and I remember one of the violinists coming up to me and said, Rimsky-Korsakov didn't understand anything about the violin. And I just looked at her and I said, are you out of your mind? I mean, what? And you do? Well, I play the violin. Yeah, well, that doesn't mean anything. Anyway, so it's the same thing with Bruckner. And orchestras that are aware of the tradition and their place in it and really pay attention are going to make a much better sound. Similarly, when you talk about brass playing, well, I mean, the Chicago Symphony brass, holy cow, fabulous, everything. But the Vienna Philharmonic had a very distinctive brass quality because they used their little rotary valve trumpets and the Vienna F horns, which are special horns, and trombone sound, which is not as big and fat as you find in other orchestras. Actually, the fascinating thing about the Vienna brass sound, and you hear it particularly in this recording, and Bruckner really lets you, is that the horns dominate. Now, horns can work. Horns work both ways. Horns can be either woodwinds or brass, depending on how the composer writes for them and what section they play with most often. But in this particular work, you want to have 3 distinct brass timbres: trumpets, trombones, and horns. And the horns are really overwhelming in this performance. I don't mean overwhelming in a bad way. What I mean is they lead. They lead the brass, and that's rare. It's unusual. Usually the trumpets do it, and the trombones play second fiddle, and the horns are there doing their thing with the woodwinds or the brass, but kind of separately. But here, especially if you listen to, for example, the scherzo, it's fabulous to be able to hear all of that amazing horn writing that Bruckner did, and the performance itself is fabulous. I mean, Böhm could be a bit dour. We all know that, right? And his Bruckner, he did 3 and 4 here, and 7 and 8 for Deutsche Grammophon. He didn't actually go whole hog in the Bruckner department, which is interesting when you think about it. But in any case, when this thing first came out on Decca, it didn't get quite as much attention as some of the other versions. It was on 4 record sides, 2 full discs, 1 to each movement. Now, that was wonderful because it allowed much better sonics because you had, bigger grooves or wider things, or, I mean, the record wasn't overloaded with music and distorting when all those big brass climaxes came in. But to have 2 records in Bruckner Fourth, everyone thought, gee, it must be the slowest Bruckner Fourth ever. It's not. It's not the quickest. I mean, it's majestic, shall we say. But the performance itself is about an hour. Let's see, it's 20, 21, and 26. All right, so it's 66 minutes. That is a bit on the slow side, but not like dreadfully, ridiculously. The Andante is 15 minutes. It can be much slower. This was, of course, before Celibidache set slow records in Bruckner. But even other people have done the work in a more expansive way. It because it was two full LPs, everyone thought it was very slow, and it just sounded glorious. It had a special quality from the very beginning. The leisureliness, the glow of the Vienna Philharmonic, the majesty of the horns, all of those things made it really a sensational performance of the Romantic Symphony and one of the greatest recordings ever. So give it a shot. It doesn't sound like any other Bruckner Fourth. That's what makes it so special. Again, when I was talking about the Beecham Beethoven Seventh, it's the same thing there. One of the things that makes these the greatest recordings ever isn't just the engineering or the quality of the playing, but it's character, personality, distinctiveness within the correct idiom. Not distinctiveness by someone just being bizarre, but distinctiveness and stylish at the same time. And this has it. It's just got it. It's wonderful. So keep on listening, friends. Thanks for joining me, and take care.